Okay, everyone, Friday show, and once again, a big thanks to Practical CBT for sponsoring it. If you're a guy looking to get your head in a better place, just like you train on the pitch, they have got 10-minute online workouts and coaching sessions that can make a real difference. As a Celtic AM listener or viewer, you can get a big discount. Just click on the link at the top of the description, and it's a pinned comment as well to go to their website and get started. Got a few things to cover today. Might be a slightly shorter video, but there's still a few things to get our teeth stuck into. And I should say a very good top of the morning to you, our Irish fans. I bet you're feeling on top of the world after your result last night. A 2-0 victory over Portugal. Great result. Just like seems, and just from watching the highlights earlier, seems like Ireland have got something going at the moment. I know the results are a bit mixed, and I think they lost to Armenia, in this qualification campaign, and they're still third. I think they have to beat Hungary away from home to qualify. So there's still a fair chance Ireland don't qualify. But just like the atmosphere at the Aviva, which is a hell of a stadium, it just seems like Irish football is alive at the moment, and a bit of a, kind of stark contrast with Scottish football, even like Hampden. I was just thinking if the Scottish national team played at a stadium like the Aviva, and Celtic, when we get to cup finals and semi-finals, played at Aviva, it would just be, a much better atmosphere. But that's probably a wider point. Just in terms of the Celtic link, Liam Scales played in this match for Ireland, played the vast majority of the game. I think he came off with about 5 minutes to go, got a booking. And although the TV cameras didn't pick it up, I assume that was for time wasting. Had a really good game, assisted the first goal for Troy Parrott with a header. And I think the big takeaway from the performance was that Liam Scales was playing at left wing back for Ireland. So left wing back in a back five. And apparently, again, didn't see the game, apparently got off to a wee rocky start against some of the quality players in the Portugal attack on that right-hand side. But I think really settled into the game, got the assist for the opening goal, and generally had a really good game. So is he our second choice left back at the moment while Marcelo Saracchi is out? I know we've got Hayato Inamura there. I just get the impression that we might be more likely to go with Liam Scales, and we might see him playing at left back a fair bit over the next couple of weeks. Johnny Kenny was an unused sub in the match, but that will still have been a great experience for him. So, well done, Ireland. Anyway, just on the Celtic stuff, obviously no match for us this weekend to talk about. However, the managerial stuff is slowly getting there. I just think it has been really slow, and even now we're kind of waiting on that definitive update from a journalist where we really get a big idea on which road the club are going down. And I guess part of the reason why we've not had that so far is that the club quite possibly haven't actually made their mind up yet. I think like Paul Tisdale, the football doctor as he calls himself, he's I think it's kind of well known that he's running the operation to get a new manager in. I think he's been tasked with, coming up with a short list, however many people are on that. And then obviously the links come into guys like Wilfried Nancy and potentially that's part of the reason why he's been included. So yeah, Paul Tisdale taking a bit of an active role in that part of the recruiting a new manager, which I guess, I'm trying to think back to previous managerial searches, is maybe a slight change from Celtic. I feel like in the past, it's just been the board the whole way, and they've come up with a list, and then, they decide who it's going to be. Sorry, one man in particular decides who it's going to be. That's still very much going to be the case. Like, this is going to come down to Dermot Desmond, and he's going to have a meeting with the new manager, and he's going to go off his gut instinct, because that's kind of how Celtic roll. And I guess the kind of irony with that is that, like, Dermot Desmond has a decent enough track record with selecting Celtic managers, and like going off that gut feeling that he gets and judging someone whether they have the makeup to be a successful Celtic manager. He quite often gets it right. So this is all just kind of going on in the background. They do have an AGM next Friday. I want to touch on that slightly just a wee bit later on in this video. The name Wilfried Nancy is one that's been spoken about probably more than any other name. He had a press conference yesterday at Columbus Crew, so he's clearly still in the States. So unless he was speaking to Celtic via the internet, like Grandad, via Zoom, then he hasn't met with Celtic. He's been in the States, United States. So it does kind of have me question exactly who Celtic have been speaking to in London. Maybe it's just Martin O'Neill and Paul Tisdale sharing a coffee and talking about their memories. But yeah, Wilfried Nancy asked up front yesterday during this Columbus Crew press conference. It was like an end-of-season press conference, given that their season ended last weekend. He was asked about the Celtic rumours, basically, the Celtic chat. He didn't give much away. His answer was, "I'm not here to talk about myself. I'm here to talk about the team. I have nothing to say on any rumours." So, not exactly shutting down talk of potentially moving to Celtic either. We also had sitting next to him the Columbus Crew general manager, Issa Tall. He was there, and he also was asked about similar kind of stuff, and he said, "Wilfried is under contract. We are actively talking about how to improve our roster next year and pre-season plans and stuff like this. Now, what does the future hold? You just never know. You need to be ready, but for the time being, he's under contract." Nancy's actual contract details at Columbus Crew are a little private. What is public is that he signed a contract extension back in April of last year, so April 2024. I have seen it mentioned online that was understood to be running until 2027, which would obviously mean he still has a couple of years to run on that. So clearly, clearly, as has been said there, he's still under contract, so we're going to have to agree some sort of compensation with Columbus Crew if we're going to speak to him. It's actually an interesting kind of subplot of all this managerial stuff is that I think like everyone we've been linked with is actually in a job at the moment, which like Celtic don't tend to poach managers from other clubs very often. I know we did it with like Ange and potentially some other ones going a bit further back, but yeah, like virtually everyone we've been linked with, maybe other than like Martin O'Neill, are actually employed by other clubs at the moment. But certainly for Nancy not shooting down the Celtic rumours, a bit similar to Kieran McKenna, but also kind of less keen to go into things than Kieran McKenna was. He spoke for like 8 minutes. Nancy basically just gave that answer, and that was it. I did see someone pointing out online that Nancy's response was very similar to like Ange Postecoglou when he was asked about links to Spurs. When he was Celtic manager, it was very much, I'm not going to speak about this, it's about the team. So yeah, we'll wait and see. I still think we might be heading towards it being Nancy, but yeah, I really wouldn't be surprised if it's Kieran McKenna. I don't feel like Cheeto Knutson is very likely. It seems like he's going to stay at Bodo Glimt. I just don't know if he would fancy moving to Celtic and going from that, great kind of job, great life, great control he has in Norway. At Bodo Glimt to move into Celtic Premier, just like miles behind everything with regards to that. It really is, different worlds in so many regards between those two jobs. So don't think it's going to be him. It's not going to be Nicky Hine, I wouldn't think. It's not going to be Craig Bellamy. It's not going to be Ange Postecoglou. Robbie Keane's in a job. That one does kind of still kind of concern me in the back of my mind. I wonder if, he does seem like a very Dermot Desmond type name, and as we've already covered, this is basically down to Dermot Desmond, and if he feels he believes in someone, he will just push it through regardless of how we all feel. So yeah, as I said yesterday, it's a waiting game. So today is Friday the 14th of November. A week from today, 21st of November, we will have the AGM, the annual general meeting taking place at Celtic Park. And yeah, kind of like I was saying, I kind of feel like Celtic might want a manager appointed for that, just because it's like one less thing to deal with and be asked questions about. Then I was also thinking maybe not having a manager appointed and all the speculation going on there will kind of detract from the other major issues at the club, or certainly that would maybe be the board's thinking. So, well, we have a manager in place for the AGM, which is a week today. Regardless, it's going to be an interesting AGM. I'm not going to say that it's going to be like a really dramatic affair, because I think, okay, this might be the most kind of talked up AGM, but there's certainly been ones in previous years where people have said, oh, it's going to be powder keg and all that stuff. And they've kind of flattered to deceive and been a bit of an anticlimax. And I do see a similar kind of scenario happening next Friday, but there will hopefully be some interesting things to take away from it. I just wanted to take a wee look at this AGM notice that the club shared, and I should just point out that this kind of thing isn't my speciality, but I have been chat GPTing a fair bit of it just to get a bit of kind of understanding for what's going to happen at this AGM. Obviously, they'll take care of the business, and then I think at the end they do like the questions, and people will ask about the price of pies and Celtic TV subscriptions and Rangers transfer business, and there'll be some kind of vague dig at Rangers in there. But in terms of the stuff that we really kind of know is going to happen, so Celtic sent this AGM notice out, and it's on their website as well. 2025 annual general meeting it's taking place at Celtic Park next Friday, 10:30 a.m. it will start. So they've got 17 resolutions here. So and this is where I need to start consulting my notes. So you've got resolutions 1 to 14, which are ordinary resolutions. These are the ones to appoint board members. So you've got, I'll just read them all out. Brian Rose, Brian Wilson, Christopher Mackay, Dermot Desmond, Michael Nicholson, Peter Law, Sharon Brown, Tom Allison. Now, an ordinary resolution, if you hear that and wonder what it is, these are basically standard AGM votes. An ordinary resolution needs a simple majority, which is obviously over 50% to pass. They're pretty routine, and despite obviously there's a lot of opposition to guys like Dermot Desmond and Michael Nicholson and Peter Law, and I saw the Collective even had something on Brian Wilson yesterday. Despite all of that, feeling at the moment like these are, going to pass given the way that the shareholdings work and the amount of votes that certain people have and other people falling into line. So these are almost always a non-event, but they do require 50% of votes for them to pass and for these people to be re-elected onto the board. So we then have resolutions 10 and 11, which are advisory only. This means that these resolutions are not legally binding. Even if shareholders vote for them, the company's not legally required to implement them. So they are to do with pay, basically. Directors being compensated for carrying out roles and responsibilities, and receive the report detailing the compensation. So not massively important there. You then have resolution 15, which is a special resolution, which means that it requires 75% or a majority to pass. It's a bit more serious. Not totally sure what all that goes. The really interesting one, I think, are 16 and 17. These are shareholder requisitions, which basically means that shareholders, not the board, have forced these resolutions onto the AGM agenda. So these are the ones, I think, being led by the Celtic Trust. Under Section 338, shareholders have the legal right to require the company to put their resolution to a vote at the AGM, even if the directors don't agree with it, as long as the criteria is met. That's either 5% of shares or 100 small shareholders. So these have been put forward by shareholders, and they're, I think, going to be interesting, and hopefully they pass and then we get some sort of kind of movement on them. So the first one is the AGM. This AGM instructs the board to prepare a strategic review and a published report with a football, financial and strategic plan, medium term, 3 to 5 years, The plan should contain a clear stated strategic aim and measurable football and financial goals for the board to target. Remuneration should be linked to achieving those goals. That would obviously make a lot of sense. Number 17, the AGM has no confidence in the Chief Executive, Chairman and Chief Financial Officer. So that's Michael Nicholson, Peter Law, Chris Mackay. Their handling of successive transfer windows, development of the stadium and fan engagement are not what we should be expected for a club of Celtic stature. We further call on those non-executive directors who have been in place for too long, who consistently failed to hold the executive directors to account, to resign. This would allow for a refresh of the board, bringing fresh ideas and a commitment to a complete reset of the relationship between the board and the club supporters, who are the sole source, directly or indirectly, of its income stream. Amen. Finally today, just another non-football story. It's that kind of day. Aberdeen have been granted a licence to sell alcohol before their game against Kilmarnock next month. So this will take place at Pittodrie, and Don supporters will be able to buy alcoholic drinks in the lower concourse of the Richard Donald stand. Caveats, as always with this kind of trial thing, alcohol will only be sold before the game. That will be stopped before kick-off. Fans will also not be able to view the pitch while they're drinking, so it'll be in the concourse. And this is a new scheme that's been trialled. I did mention it a month or so ago, maybe slightly longer. Lower league clubs were doing it, I think, in the League Cup and the group stage games of the League Cup over the summer. But this is the first time that it'll be trialled at a top flight Premiership match. Alcohol has been banned in Scottish football grounds since 1981. Just in terms of what Aberdeen are saying about this, they say the aim of the initiative is to gather insight into how a carefully managed approach to alcohol sales can support a positive and safe matchday experience for supporters as part of wider work taking place across Scottish football to improve fan engagement and enhance the overall stadium environment. So maybe baby steps towards us eventually, getting alcohol back in on a permanent basis at like Celtic Park, for example. Now, maybe having it at Celtic Park for derbies or European games might be a step too far, but certainly being able to have a beer in the concourse before a home game against, for example, Dundee, or in like a fan park like you get in Germany, on a Saturday at 1:30 or whatever before a home game, that certainly seems, more doable. I'm a little bit unsure as to what's going on here, because you see these trials happening and that seems to be positive moves, but then any time you hear like a government, a politician or a government official talking about, potentially bringing drink back to football, they just completely shut it down. So, I've made my thoughts clear in this. I don't think there's a massive issue with being able to have a beer or two before, certain matches, and hopefully it gets back to that point, because clearly people are just drinking anyway before games. So if you could find a way to get more money into football clubs and have people spending their money, in and around grounds, then I think that would be a positive. But yeah, anything to improve the match day experience at Celtic Park, I would say. Anyway, all of that chat about drink has made me pretty thirsty. I'm going to go and head for a pint. And yeah, I'll catch up with you soon.